One of the ways I like people to understand how to find neutral is think about puppies or think about kittens, and this brings your energy up as you imagine they're little toddling around, falling over each other, gets real happy, feels really joyous. And then you can just like count to 3, 3, 2, 1, not thinking about them, let that settle. That's neutral. If it continues to fall, then your set point is below neutral. So if your energy continues to fall past about 3 seconds, then you'll notice that your set point is right now, like people who are going through something, their set point of neutral feels a lot lower than neutral actually is. They're actually a lot going down.
Welcome to Get Yourself Optimized, a podcast full of secret knowledge that will enable you to reboot and 10x your life. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, author, speaker, online marketer, serial entrepreneur, coach, and a real geek when it comes to biohacking, life hacking, and lifestyle design. The divinely guided path to spiritual healing reveals itself most clearly through practical results. Amy Jo Ellis, returning to the show after her appearance here on episode 414, continues sharing incredible insights about the Court of Atonement, a spiritual healing process she discovered through direct connection with higher intelligence. This transformative healing modality resolves conflicts at the soul level, where human emotions can't interfere. Her self-published book has quietly sold 40,000 copies in over 100 countries without marketing, proving that authentic spiritual solutions can and do spread through the power of results alone. In this illuminating conversation, Amy Jo demonstrates how the Court of Atonement functions as a spiritual framework for everything from healing family rifts to clearing negative energy from accident-prone locations. She shares remarkable stories of divine intervention, explains her system of speed calls, and reveals how understanding the neutral nature of intuition can transform your spiritual practice. The discussion moves through powerful territory as Amy Jo teaches how to communicate with spiritual guides and restore peace where conflicts once dominated. This is a fascinating discussion, opening doorways to miraculous healing and teaching you to recognize those moments when the universe is actively conspiring in your favor. So without any further ado, on with the show. Amy Jo, it's so great to have you back on the show.
Oh, it's so good to be back. Thank you so much for the invite.
Yeah, so I know we talked a lot about the full Court of Atonement and how it works, and just amazing things we went into in episode 414. So we're not going to recap all that, but I do want our listener to understand how powerful the Court of Atonement is in terms of things like healing family rifts and changing limiting beliefs and removing clutter, healing your pets and your loved ones, and just healing generational trauma, all sorts of things. It's just it's a tool for everything, pretty much, it seems.
Yeah, I was going to say it's limitless. I think pretty much my guidance is if you can think it might work, you should try it.
Yeah. Well, what's a recent thing that you've used it for that maybe was not obvious until you kind of looked at it retrospectively?
I'm trying to think. I remember something happening the other day. Well, we have one we talked about speed calls a little bit in the last one, which is where I've I made a whole bunch of requests and then we gave it a name. And so we have these speed calls. And so there's something you can say, you put yourself in a Court of Atonement and then just the name. And we have one that has been named Blessed Travels, not Blessed Travels, but Blessed Travels for some reason. So we were driving down the road and all of a sudden I went, I didn't say Blessed Travels. And so I went, I put myself and say my name into a full Court of Atonement for the purpose of Blessed Travels. And like out of nowhere, this guy comes, boom, right over. My husband hits the brakes and everything went perfect. And it was like, I think that was coming, and that's why I felt I needed to say that, and that we avoided something there, because there was almost like as time stood still as there was this very dangerous situation that just resolved in front of my eyes. But it was like, I have had so many people tell me that using the Court of Atonement with that speed call attached called Blessed Travels has performed miracles for them, where cars wouldn't start and things like that. So like I said, it's just interesting. You can use it for anything.
Yeah, that
Plus,
reminds me of something that happened to one of my executive team. He was driving, and his wife was in the passenger seat. His child was in the back seat, and his wife just out of the blue says, "Get into the right lane." And he didn't know what to make of that. It just seemed so arbitrary and out of the blue, and he didn't do it. And she repeated herself, "Get in the right lane." It was the third time that she repeated herself really loud this time. He gets in the right lane, and immediately, as soon as he's in the right lane, in the left lane, a car crashes in front of them.
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to listen to that intuition, boy.
Yeah, very important. It's like this is that still small voice that sometimes people find easy to ignore, and then you get slapped on the upside of the head with a 2x4 if you ignore it.
That's right. And about listening in, that's one of the most important things, is to pay attention to that voice that we're getting, and following it to the letter. Just saying, okay, wait, if you really get a hit for something, stop and go, all right, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to trust it, and whatever it is. My dad, was just, since we're on that kind of topic, we were driving in the truck. We were pulling a trailer, and we had a horse in the trailer that was extremely dangerous, like attack anybody on sight. And we'd had to tranquilize him to get him in there. And my dad was driving, and he said, you know what? I'm going to get off the freeway early and fill the tank. When we got off the freeway at the off ramp, the bumper of our truck fell off on the left side, and it had that horse in that extremely dangerous horse in there, and everything was fine because he got off the freeway 4 miles before he needed to fill up at a gas station that there'd been 20 more before we got home. So just listening to that voice is really, really the most profound thing you can do for yourself.
Yeah, yeah, and I forget who told me or said this in I think it was a documentary about intuition. It was an intuitive, and he explained the three things that make it intuition. One of which is that it comes in unexpected, comes out of the blue, right? Another aspect of intuition is that it's charge neutral, emotionally charge neutral. So it's not exciting, it's not devastating or sad or anything. It just simply is, right? Somebody you really care about just died, heaven forbid, and it just comes in, just simple fact. There's no positive or negative to it. And then the third aspect of it is that it just sticks. It doesn't jump to the next thought and the next thought, and you're suddenly off thinking about something completely different. It just stays there. Or if you do go thinking about something else, it comes right back. It's kind of persistent.
I love hearing you say that it is charged neutral. That's such a powerful way of putting it. Because it's this, like we said, you call it the quiet, still voice in the back of your head. So I'm always trying to demystify the information that I give, because there's so many people who think that this is, that when I'm hearing spirit, that I'm like got this voice booming in my head. That almost never happens. It can happen if they really, more often than not, I feel my hair being touched when somebody wants my attention. It feels like I've walked through a spider web. Something's there. If I'm not paying attention, they'll get my attention that way rather than raising the volume of it. And it's this. It's like you have to get yourself quiet in order to hear this. This isn't over the top of everything else. This is, and yet, as you said, it's neutral. It kind of reminds me of, if anybody's ever done any sound engineering, and you've got you can pan to the left and pan to the right. So the sounds come from here, the sounds come from there, but this sound really comes right through the center. It's right. It's inside of you. It's in the back of your mind, kind of coming forward. Does that make,
Yeah.
does
Now,
that
how
make
do you
sense to you?
discern if that voice, that still small voice, that's actually a biblical term, still small voice. How can you discern whether that is coming from the light or you're getting maybe misled?
Um, I I work on, for myself, it's making sure that my energy is clear and that my emotional level is at least neutral or above. And so if I'm ever in any kind of like an angry, upset, I'm not paying attention to that kind of thing. And it'll come through in a positive feeling. It'll come down, like you said, it's neutral. One of the ways I like people to understand how to find neutral is so you can say, okay, think about puppies or think about kittens, and this brings your energy up as you know, imagine they're little toddling around, falling over each other, gets real happy, feels really joyous. And then you can just like count to three, go 3, 2, 1, not thinking about them, let that settle. That's neutral. If it continues to fall, then your set point is below neutral. So if your energy continues to fall past about 3 seconds, then you'll notice that your set point is right now, like, people who are going through something, their set point of neutral feels a lot lower than neutral actually is. They're actually a lot going down. Does that make any sense? I'm trying to make sure I'm making understanding here. So if a person is dealing with depression or sadness, they'll continue to feel that energy fall from puppies a lot farther past than that 1.5 seconds of 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, coming 3, 2, 1 down. This is neutral. So puppies, kittens, beautiful rose gardens, things that bring your energy up. And then just say, okay, let's not think about that anymore. 3, 2, 1. You can feel it settle. And if it continues going down, then you've got something in your system that's causing you to drop lower than that. And trying to figure out how to make peace with what is upsetting us is one of the best things we can do to allow that intuition to be good, so that we know that when there's not a voice. I was going to say that I don't, a voice that comes in and says, hey, let's not even say a voice, a knowingness that says, I need to do this. It's more of a knowingness than it is a voice, even. That it's what about this? It's just an idea. It's a thought. It's an impression. It's because most of us don't hear a voice unless we get really quiet. And then we really for me, I get more of an understanding in word form. And if I once played around with my guide. I have a guide. His name is Abraham. I have to say, I was really upset to find out that my guide's name was already taken by Esther Hicks. But nonetheless, he came through as Abraham. And he always said to me that that when he comes through in this real kind of a feeling of power, would be what I would say. I have this sense of real power when he comes in, and I have a sense of what he's saying. It's just a knowingness. And so I told him, I said, I used to have a guide whose name was Flo, and she had an Irish accent, and I could easily identify her because I could hear that Irish accent as she was talking to me. And so he came through with a Scottish accent for a little while, and it made it easier for me to understand. And then he's like, it isn't good because somebody could mimic this, and it would be better that you go to that knowingness place again. So so he took that back. But
Are you still working with Abraham a lot, or?
I am. He left for a couple of years. He came every time I worked with clients, but he wasn't like on top of me like he was for a while. For a while, it was like 70% of the time he was there, and they kind of gave it space. And now he's back full time. He's like, no, you're. So I think what he does is he works with people till he gets them really kind of set in what it is they're doing, and then you graduate, and then he moves. But like I said, whenever he's dimensional, so he can work with 4 or 5 people at once. But for some reason, he was like, no, he wanted me to work with other guides, and now he's back. So yeah, I'm working with him hot and heavy now.
Okay. And this is the same Abraham that's in the Bible, yes?
It's the Bible, the Quran, and the Torah. If I get that right.
Yeah, the Torah is the first 5 books of Moses, the first 5 books of the Bible. Yep.
Yep. And so I was shocked when I figured that out. I saw the words Abrahamic religions, and I said, is that you?
Is that you?
Like, yes, in one I don't like the word incarnation, but in one incarnation of him, in one aspect of him, yes, he said.
Yeah. There's incredible stories about him. Incredible stories. At one point, he was put into an oven in Ur Kasdim. He was put into an oven to be burned alive, and God saved him, and he didn't burn. And he was able to get out of the oven unscathed.
Wow, that's really something.
Yeah.
He said to me once, I asked him how old he lived to be, and I think in the Bible they have him being, do you know how old that is? It's like 175 years or 200 years, something. And he said, well, time moved very differently then. And he said it would be more like 900 years to you now. And he said, like, time is kind of sped up. And he said that it's very different. And he said, and I went, 900 years. I said, what did you look like? What, I said, when we start getting into our 80s and 90s, I can't imagine living that long, 175 years. What did you look like? And he said, well, for the most part, I looked like I was 30 years old. And he goes, until the desire for wanting things to be different began to kill me. Mm. And so he's saying that wanting things to be different is what caused the stress that aged him. And that is a point to take home. That wanting things to be different is the root of illness. It's the root of aging. And like that's a pretty powerful thought.
It is. And it's it reminds me also something I learned. It's a famous phrase from Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu. He was famous for saying this, and it is, "This too is for the good." A great story of Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu. So he was sent by all the other rabbis and sages of the time to do a very dangerous mission of taking some jewels and treasure and giving it to this king who had put a decree out to eliminate all the Jews, to wipe them off the face of the planet. And so it was essentially like a bribe. So he's like, okay, I'll do it. And he stays at an inn on the way there, and the innkeeper steals the jewels and replaces the jewels in the chest with sand and rocks. And Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu doesn't realize that the switch happened. So he presents, when he finally makes it to the king, he presents the treasure, and it's opened in front of the king. And of course, there's nothing but dirt and rocks in there. And he throws the rabbi into prison, deciding later what to do with him, probably to be killed. But, he's really irritated and upset about this. But Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu is like, this too is for the good. Somehow this is going to work out. So he keeps an upbeat, positive attitude even while he's sitting in prison. And the most miraculous thing happens that night. The king has a dream. They say that Elijah the prophet came in to the dream, pretending to be one of the king's, gods or sages or whatever, because of course they were idol worshippers. And says, hey, that that sand is not regular sand. That's like magical sand. They're not going to disrespect you so blatantly by giving you a bunch of sand. No, that's actual magical sand. In the battles that you're fighting right now in this war, throw that dirt out onto the enemy and you will win. And so he does. And they win. Miraculously, they win this war. And so the guy sitting in prison actually gets released, and he gets treated like royalty and sent back, and okay, decree is canceled, the Jews can live. And it was in part because of his faith, that he knew that this too is for the good. It can only be for the good. The Creator only does good, and he only wants the very best. Really cool.
That is such a powerful story. There's a thought that I try to like wake up in him and infuse myself, which is the universe or God or whatever you want to say only transpires for me. And so this too is for the good. It's always working in my favor. It's always, but I also have an idea that our negative thoughts are bringing in other things that we don't want, but they too will work out to our benefit, if you understand that. So there's like a dichotomy here in the way that I see things. But I was one day, I had taken a recording studio computer in to be repaired. And I told him, I said, look, there's all this software that's in this thing is connected to this hard drive and motherboard, and everything in it needs to be replaced identically to what is coming out. So you'll have to buy new of everything, or I'm going to have to relicense all of it, and it'll take me days to do it. So please don't change anything. Just replace exactly what you take out. Well, in the meantime, he got it in there. He couldn't get apart, and then he had to move buildings and facilities, and it got lost in the shuffle. Took him a couple of months to get it back to me, and he totally forgot what had been said, and he'd gutted it and changed everything in it. And I knew all of that licensing was going to need to be redone, and it was just going to be a nightmare. And before breaking into tears, I just said, hey, give me a minute. I'm going to call my husband. I'm going to go talk to my husband. And I walked out of the door and I went, everything in the universe transpires for me. What if this is for the best? What if this computer, having just been rebuilt to top of the line and killing everything in it, basically, is actually in my best interest? And so it was made by a gentleman who worked for CBS Records at the time, and he ran all he ran all of their computers and rebuilt all of their stuff. So he owned all this licensing, and he had put it in there. So I called him and I said, hey, Paul, this happened. What's it going to take to re-put this online? And he goes, you know what? I just built a computer for a guy. And he goes, it's worth $15,000. I'll sell it to you for $5,000. And I had $5,000, and I just went, oh yeah, let's do that. So I just walked back into the guy and I said, can you sell that computer for what you've got in it? And he said, yeah. And I said, good, give me my hard drives and you can sell that one. And I paid him some money for the work he put in it, because I didn't think it was right just to dump him on it. But I ended up walking away with a really better. So like I said, it for me, this was like people understanding I just totaled my brand new Porsche. You know what I mean? For me, this was really seriously negative, and I walked away from it with the ability to buy an even better model. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, it worked out. But it was because I didn't go, oh no, oh no, oh no. I said, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, okay, okay. And so like you said, him saying this too is for the good. If we can find that frame of mind, things go a lot easier for us.
Yeah, miraculously better for us. So I get a client terminating services with us, or I get a staff person giving notice, and I immediately, it's like in my muscle memory to go to, this too is for the good.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
is
it's not
a
easy. You have to work that muscle really, really hard all the time.
Yeah, I was, like I said, I was really fighting against the impulse of just breaking down and crying in the moment that he told me he'd got it. I rebuilt it. I put all this new stuff. I'm like, that wasn't what was asked, And I didn't want to get upset with him. I knew he'd done a great job for me, everything. And I stopped, and it did work out for both of us,
Yeah,
to be for the best. I was
yeah,
like, all right.
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
that's really interesting.
Yeah. Now, do you have any family members or loved ones that don't speak with you anymore, and you feel like at one point you felt like this was a tragedy or a travesty, but now it's like, no, this too is for the good?
Um, I don't, because I use the Court of Atonement, and it resolves the conflicts. The Court of Atonement was found when I asked my guides, what can I do to solve the conflicts in the family? And just the idea of putting their souls into a court of atonement. And I was like, what the heck does that mean? And he goes, just look at the words. A court is a place where you go to settle disputes. And he goes, and atonement, just look at the word, at one meant. You're trying to bring everything back to wholeness. And so we started putting the souls into a court of atonement, and the problems of the past just kind of fell away. Now, as you were saying, there have been, not on my side of the family, but in my husband's side of the family, where other family members, it's more like there's no conflict there, but it's like they're not going in the same direction that we're going.
Yeah.
And so to hear them talk and rant about their political views and their things, I'm okay to just sit and say that, wow, that's fascinating how they see it, we don't have any real, like, no judgment against them or whatever, but they're using terminology and stuff that's really not congruent with being a happy person. And so pursuing a relationship with them further beyond that isn't something that we go after. And so there's no conflict between us. There's no if they called, we'd immediately pick up the phone and say hello, but we don't pick up the phone and call them very much, because we know that the conversation on the other end is just going to not be a happy one.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, there's some people refer to the 5D and the 3D realities, and that they're diverging, and people who are on that 3D track, which is a tough road, they're not compatible with your vibration if you're trying to be 5D and stay that way.
Right. And the thing is that you can have a relationship with them. You just have to let go of judgment and say, wow, that's fascinating that they think that way.
Yeah.
And I try to be like sincere and listen to what it is that they're saying, and try to understand why they're saying it. But I try to just like duck water off a duck's back, allow the things that don't agree with me to just flow away, and don't engage in an argument against it, because it's like that's not going to go anywhere. And to tell somebody, oh, you're being so negative, isn't going to get you a positive result. Yeah, you just have to kind of listen. And I always kind of think of it as, I want to offer a hand up out of the hole, and not be saying, I'm up here and you're down there. And you want to have the conversation and say, well, have you thought about this? And see if you can help that person see maybe a different way than what they're saying. But I'm non-political, completely non-political. You guys can tell me anything. I'm not gonna engage. I lived for 10 years in Puerto Rico. We weren't allowed to vote. And that was a really wonderful experience, to not have a horse in the game, a horse in the race, to just watch and listen. Because I always feel like no matter what's going on politically, we can use prayer and prayer and energy work to try to lean things more in the direction we would like to see them.
Yeah. I mean, that's much more powerful than your vote, is your prayers and your unshakable faith and belief that everything is for the good, that changes the outcomes of elections and the paths of hurricanes and everything.
Right. It's, and like I said, I have never really cared at the end result of an election. It, okay, what prayers do I need to say now?
Yeah. Speaking of which prayers to say now, or which full Court of Atonement speed call to utilize. So I'd asked about, do you have family members who won't speak to you? I still have a family member, one of my daughters, who doesn't speak to me. I actually had this conversation with Sheila Gillette, who actually got Esther Hicks started way back in the day, in I think the 80s. So Sheila Gillette's been doing the channeling of 12 archangels for like 50 years now. Really cool lady. And so I interviewed her and I told her about the situation with my daughter who doesn't speak to me. She doesn't speak to my wife or to our son, which is her half brother, and hasn't now for many years. I'm at peace with it. I have a bigger picture view of this now that I've seen some of the other lifetimes. I got little glimpses of lifetimes we've had together that were difficult, to say the least. And it's like, okay, this is it is what it is, and it all works out in the end. Whatever happens is going to be for the best. And but still, years later now, she still isn't talking to us, and I'm just curious, is there, and I have, by the way, I've used the full Court of Atonement. I didn't use a bunch of speed calls. I just used kind of the standard Court of Atonement to resolve all
Right. Conflicts between us.
Yeah, all the conflicts, all the unresolved stuff, and didn't shift. So I'm curious, is there a speed call or is there something that pops in your mind that you think maybe try that one?
Yeah, more than a speed call. Okay, let me go in and get some guidance here because I want to make sure that I'm not throwing something out there that's going to be too hard to explain. So give me just a second to check in. Now, do you do any discernment yourself of, like, do you do any dowsing or what muscle testing or things like that?
I used to, but my guidance is to not rely on those, that those have been crutches for me. So I don't use that, but I'm discerning all the time by asking questions like, is this of the light? Or is this truly divine and sacred?
Can you tell a yes or no? You can tell a yes or no answer.
Oh yeah, I'll get a yes as a green check and an X as a no, or I hear it.
Okay, so was your daughter? Is your daughter being guided by a divinely appointed soul?
What I get is mixed.
Mixed. Okay, that makes sense to me. I feel like our souls are more like the hard drive, or not the hard drive. Let's say they're more like the internet that we hook up to. They have the vast knowledge of everything. And I actually think that they're interchangeable a little bit throughout our lives. So like we can upgrade to a more powerful search engine, so to speak. That's like way too much to get into, but yes, there's a lot going on with the soul. So you get a mix there with her. And so let's just I want to explain the Court of Atonement for those who are listening, that it's a basically it's just like handing this over to a higher vibrational understanding. So what we're going to do is try to ask basically God, for the lack of another word of it, but higher intelligence, to take a look at the situation and resolve it at the soul level. For the most part, we use it as one soul speaks to another soul, and they without the constraint of human emotions, they can look at a situation, what happened, and they can decide whether they want to resolve it or not. According to my guide Abraham, there's two components to forgiveness. The first is understanding what happened, and the second is accepting that reason. So we understand what happened and accepting why. And so the way I teach this is to say, there's you're watching a TV show, the woman's lit the candles at the table, she's waiting for her husband to come home, she's got dinner on the table, and then scene 2 is the candles have all burned down, she's on the phone, I don't know where he is, this is really upsetting, this is scary. And then scene 3 is she's on the phone going, well, I had another guy who didn't come home like this, and he was cheating on me. And all of a sudden she's off on this tangent of how angry she is that he's doing this to her. When he walks in the door, she says, where were you? And there's no politeness in it. No, she's very angry. And his answer is going to solve the problem or not. And so if he says, I was out drinking with the guys and lost track of time, she's not gonna accept that reason. But if he says it was a horrible accident, she'll go, oh, honey, are you okay? And all anger is gone in less than a second. She understands what happened and she accepted that reason. So now the Court of Atonement, let's go back to the idea that he went out drinking with the guys and lost track of time. If you put the two souls in a Court of Atonement and you resolve the conflict between them at their points of origin. Well, the point of origin is he didn't come home for dinner, but actually it was earlier in the day when he almost got fired and people were really mean to him at work and he was really upset. And the guys said, hey, don't take that home to your wife. Let's go out. Let's talk about this. And then he went out and lost track of time. She can see that now at the soul level. The soul understands, it accepts, and it lets it slide. It says, all right, that I do understand that, I accept. Now, it's never known to the conscious mind. It just doesn't feel important to us and we lose track of it. And so the problems just kind of fall away. We just don't seem to remember them anymore. And if we do remember them, we might say, that's not worth that. It's not worth being unhappy about because I'd rather have the relationship than that. So we were talking about your daughter and the possibility of this, is she being divinely guided by a divinely appointed soul, and is her soul divinely appointed? And so the way that I use the Court of Atonement is are you willing to try this on air? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So anybody out there who has somebody who maybe not be responding as well as we'd like to the energy healing we're trying to give them, try saying I and state your full name, first, middle, last, and married names, whatever, as much name as you got. Throw that out there. So I state your name.
So I, Stephan Martin Spencer.
Place myself.
Place myself.
Your name again. And say your name again, because it's like
Martin
going to the
Spencer.
window. Into a full Court of Atonement.
Into a full Court of Atonement.
I bring in the person that you're in conflict with, and just say it under your breath. You don't need to say their name on air.
Okay.
So just say her name so that you're stating it to them.
I bring in. Also into the full Court of Atonement.
Right. And I asked we're going to do both of us at the same time because that's just only fair. So I asked to analyze our timelines. And resolve any and all reasons. We may or may not have received. A divinely appointed soul. I asked to resolve those reasons at their points of origin. I asked for divine intervention. To appoint us both. Divinely appointed souls. Right. And all that this is really doing, so that people understand, is that when we're not assigned a divinely appointed soul, it's happened in a past life. And something happened in a past life that we were like afraid to go in and do the life reviews. and have the life reviews to clean up the connection. So the soul is, of course, divine, but it didn't get the connection that it needed because there's a blip in there somewhere in a past life that did not clear it. So more than likely, all of us have a past life that didn't get cleared as well as we wanted. So I always just put myself in as well, ask to resolve any reasons we didn't, because it's going to be the same soul we get connected to. It's just going to improve the connection. My guides choose the terminology. I don't get to make it up, so I can't change the words to make it make more sense to us. I just follow what the guidance says. If you close your eyes and see your daughter's face, I should have had you do it before. What expression does she have?
Oh, she's smiling.
She's smiling. Okay, good. And so now let me ask you: is she being governed by a divinely appointed soul?
In that scene, yes.
Okay. And are you seeing scenes that she's not?
My sense of it is this is not translated into the physical, into her daily life.
Okay, yeah. Right. You're having a different view. And so is she now in this lifetime at this moment being divinely guided?
No.
No. Still no, even after we've just done that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I state your name.
I, Stephan Martin Spencer.
Place my daughter and say her name in your mind.
Okay. I place my daughter
into a full Court of Atonement.
Into a full Court of Atonement.
I ask to analyze the entirety of her soul's timeline.
The entirety of her soul's timeline.
Okay, let's see what's going on now. I ask for divine intervention.
I ask for divine intervention.
To resolve the reasons. That she's not being divinely guided.
The reasons that she's not being divinely guided.
And divinely, let's say, governed by a...
And divinely governed.
By a love-filled, divinely appointed soul.
By a love-filled, divinely appointed soul.
It's to resolve those reasons at their points of origin.
To resolve those reasons at their points of origin.
I ask to enhance her connection to a divinely appointed soul.
I ask to enhance her connection to a divinely appointed soul.
Let's see if, with a little more reverence, if we've made any shift there for her. If you go in and test on her now.
It feels like that did something different, more substantial.
Okay. Does she have, let's just say, non-beneficial entities in her energy field?
Yes.
Yes. Say, I ask to remove those. Say, can you remove them? Just say that. Can you remove those from her energy field?
I'm getting a no.
You get it. Can God remove those from her energy field?
Well, it can, but
so try it. Just say, can God remove them? See if the answer is yes or no at that.
The answer is yes.
And to say, I ask God to remove them from her energy field.
Yeah. So the answer I'm receiving on this is meddling.
Oh, this is meddling?
Yeah. She's got a journey she has to go on.
Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is coming in like no positive, negative charge.
Right. I just asked if you can refuse it. If they're getting an answer no, then I respect that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that this is her journey. I still would suggest say, well, I ask you to remove what can be removed.
Okay. I ask that what is in the most benevolent outcome for her and everyone else involved, for that to be removed.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Because I think of it as we're doing everything we're doing at the soul level. So the soul has the right to refuse.
Yeah.
There's one energy source that has been very hard, and that's absorbed siblings. And have you studied that at all? Have you understood what that
So
is?
we actually talked about it on our previous interview, episode 414. So I sensed that I had an absorbed sibling, and I did a healing on that. I did the full Court of Atonement on that, and it really did resolve something. I actually had a conversation with him, and that's really much more at peace now. It's fully resolved, is what I'm getting. It's fully resolved.
And I was going to say, some people, it wasn't going as easily as I had hoped it would for them. And so I've kind of changed the absorbed sibling resolution is what it's called. So if you think you may have another, let's just say, I like to look at it this way. Dogs only have 2 ovaries, and yet they have 10 puppies at once, right? And we have 2 ovaries. We're obviously not set up to nurse 10 puppies. But I believe that we ovulate more eggs in a month, and we just kind of narrow it down to 1. And those other fetuses, they get absorbed and create the placenta just uses that information to create a baby. You know what I mean? It's not anything. So, but if there is a spirit that gets attached to that and we pull that in, then we end up with this spirit that doesn't feel loved, doesn't feel wanted, doesn't feel seen. And we find ourselves feeling like nobody hears me, nobody wants me, nobody loves me, because this voice is in our head, constantly kind of saying that to us. And it isn't really us. The way that I found this information was a friend of mine and I were trying to figure out what was going on in our family dynamic after my sister died. Everything was really hard. And so we were trying to figure out how to kind of clear this. And we were 4,000 miles apart. I was in Puerto Rico and she was in California. And we saw a dial of, we pretended to see a clock on the ceiling. And then we made my mom be a green dot and I was a pink dot and my dad was a yellow dot. And we were trying to see, like, family dynamic style, what was going on, and like family constellation style, what was going on in the family dynamic. And all of a sudden I noticed that my mother's light was shifting from green to blue. I opened my mouth to say that, and my friend said, something's going on with your mother. She's changing colors. She's seeing the exact same thing I'm seeing, and we're 4,000 miles apart. And so she said, she goes, I think something's in orbit around her and I'm just going to catch it. And she reached up and she goes, oh, it's like a little person all munched up like a wad of chewing gum. And my hair stood up because my mother had a tumor removed that was hair and bone and teeth and an entire veining system on her ovary. And that they had told her it was a sibling that was in her since birth. And that had, like, hormones had triggered it to grow. And so this, so that's where the concept of this other spirit came forward. Was as soon as we found that, I tried to befriend her and gave her a name. And one thing I found out quickly is that this was not a kind person. This was a very angry mental state. And she was convinced that she was my mother and not my aunt, because I was calling her Aunt Amelia. And she's like, I'm your mother. You're born of the ovary that was me. And then it turns out in chimerism that women can give birth to babies that are not even in the DNA. They look like they are their niece or nephew and not their children. And so what was being brought to forward through that spirit was true. And so if you have that feeling, you just put yourself in a court of atonement. I state your name, place myself in a full court of atonement for the purpose of absorbed sibling resolution. And what this does is it goes back kind of in time and asks to stop the embryo from being conceived. And then it also requests transcendence assistance of it. And now the upgrade that's most recent to it is it shows that spirit what its existence will be like if it does not accept the transcendence assistance, and what its life will be like if it does, and what its existence will be like. And then it seems to shift it a little better than we'd done before because of that new upgrade.
Yeah. And you said requesting transcendence assistance, as if it's the most natural thing to say. But those three words probably haven't come out of most people's mouths unless they've studied with you and learned your speed calls, because that's actually speed call number 30, right?
Right. Requesting transcendence assistance is just trying to bring in someone that they love and trust and can show them, guide them into the light, and get them to where they can accept that they're not living, and accept that. And so, like I said, it shows them their existence if they don't transcend. And then it shows them what their existence could be like if they did. And so far, I haven't found one that didn't accept and move.
Yeah. And you have dozens and dozens of these speed calls, and they have maybe handfuls of sentences that go with each that you don't have to recite because you just use the short code, the speed call.
The shortcut.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm going to write a book of what's inside the speed calls. And because the speed calls have between 3 and 11 to 15 pages. I think some have 15 pages now of what's written to go inside of that call to get it. One of the best ones that I have right now is called Restoration of Peace. And so, and it's great. I wrote it for clearing locations where car accidents have happened, and mass murders and things like that, so that you've got a location that's got really dense, horrible energy there. And we're asking, you got to take it at face value. I'm asking for the restoration of peace in this location. Well, what's it going to take to do that? And so it's asking to neutralize the negative energy that was created by the event, resolve the reasons the events took place. And so I love to use it where scenes of car accidents have been. So if you have like a busy intersection that gets a lot of car accidents, go and say, okay, place this this location in a Court of Atonement for the purpose of restoration of peace. And people are shocked and awed at how no more accidents there. And I moved into a house here. And when the week that I moved in, there was a really, really bad accident. We're on a 25-mile-an-hour road, and these two cars collided because there's no stop signs. There's no yield signs, no stop sign. And they just don't know that it's unprotected. And somebody hit them, and they knocked the two cars, ended up wrapped around a tree, and they had to use the jaws of life to get people. I mean, it was a very serious accident. And I can feel that energy just like, and I'd walk over to it, could still feel it. I kept clearing it until I couldn't feel it anymore. It took me several days because I didn't have this call yet, and took several days to clear it. Well, I met a man on that day that lived in the house where the accident took place. And I saw him again a couple of years later. And I said, oh yeah, I said, oh yeah, we did meet. I met you the day of the really bad accident. And he goes, which one? And I said, it's only been one that I was here for. And he's like, oh, you're kidding, honey. They happen every other week, man. It's every other week. They're here all the time. And I said, well, I've been here 2 years. That's only been one. And he went, oh my gosh, you're right. There hasn't been an accident here. They were happening. He goes, they were almost, it was just every other week, every other week. They were constantly horrible accidents on that corner. And there hasn't been another in 5 years because I cleared up whatever the energy was that was causing it. That negative energy, like attracts like, boom, yeah. More accidents.
Well, you requested it, and then God and the upper worlds made it happen, right? So you're making the request. Sometimes it could be denied, right?
Usually not.
Yeah.
We I guess it could be denied when we're looking at a location such as this. There's okay. So give me just a second. Let me ask my guides. Let me see. They're saying really there's no reason for it to be denied. Okay. So they go back and say man has dominion over the earth. And if it's your desire to clear it up, then you have the right to do so.
Oh, cool. I know
And
we're
so,
out of
and
time. I just noticed the
yeah,
clock here, and my wife has a podcast. She's starting in a minute, so I better wrap up. But wow, this was just an amazing, awesome conversation, which I was expecting as much, and so thank you for bringing your wisdom and your authenticity and your desire to be a force for good in the world. You're just doing amazing things. So thank you. And if somebody wants to learn from you, take some of your classes, and buy your books and learn the Court of Atonement, where should we send them?
it's courtofatonement.com, court like court of law, and at one mint. So Court of Atonement. And there's all kinds of free things in there. If you sign up for the email, they'll give you 14 days of free lessons on how to use it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Amy Jo. And you're a light in the world. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I wanted to say I really appreciate you having me on here, and that your podcast is really doing great things in the world. Very, very impressive. Thank you. It's really an honor to be included.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And thank you, listener, for being part of the movement to make the world a better place. We'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off. If you want to check out the original interview of Amy Jo Ellis on this show, episode 414, it's at getyourselfoptimized.com/414. And if you want to hear more conversations like this one on accessing higher wisdom, then I recommend episode 272 with Guru Singh, episode 403 with Echo Bodine, and episode 413 with Dr. Pamela Moss. Also, I invite you to check out the show notes, transcript, action-based checklist, and all the URLs mentioned in this interview with Amy Jo Ellis at getyourselfoptimized.com/515. If you enjoyed the conversation, I encourage you to share this episode and, more importantly, the entire show, Get Yourself Optimized, with a friend. Change your life and help me spread the light. Thank you. Thanks for listening to Get Yourself Optimized. Nearly a decade ago, I started a journey that completely transformed my personal life and my business. Now I'm taking on a very select number of high-caliber coaching clients and personally helping them optimize their lives. I have limited spots, so if you're interested, go now to getyourselfoptimized.com and apply for one-on-one coaching or for our high-level mastermind. By the way, if you have any questions or comments whatsoever, email me at host@getyourselfoptimized.com. See you next week.